powerful.
Well, it's more than that, and I want you to speak to this. I passed the point of no return the day I stepped up 15-plus years ago. You passed the point of no return almost 20 years ago, and it is a spiritual decision. You feel the chains come off. The world opens up to you. You literally are so fulfilled that your life is so dynamic and filled with the energy of love in the universe that it is indescribable, and you leave the cave, Plato's cave, and come out into the light. And they know that, and if they kill David Icke or Ron Paul or Alex Jones or Jesse Ventura, it highlights, in fact, bring me a yellow highlighter. I want to show folks what I'm talking about. It highlights the headline. It underlines it. It puts 5 exclamation points. It shouts it out. And they've learned that when they kill an icon, what did Benjamin Franklin say? What did Thomas Jefferson said? He said that, you know, I mean, he talked about just committing to something and taking action and never giving in and never giving up, and that idea is unstoppable. In fact, I'm going to highlight this article right here. We're under attack, support alternative media and Infowar. I mean, what happens when I highlight it? What happens? It stands out. If they kill us, it only gives more power to us, and as Thomas Jefferson said, the tree of liberty must be watered by the blood of patriots and tyrants. You know, fact is, I don't want to be fertilizer to defeat the New World Order. I think I'm doing more good alive than dead, but I've committed. I've said, whatever you're going to do it, but I've made the primal decision to set my entire will, my entire soul, my entire being against everything this dehumanization and this parasitic system represents. And it is that decision that is the equivalent of holy water and silver crosses to vampires. David Icke.
Well, it gives you enormous power when you commit yourself to something, and the consequences are not part of the equation. Because most people are not doing something because they fear the consequences. Will someone take me out? Will people ridicule me? Will I lose my job? Will I not get picked for the next big movie? And so that need, it's like that great line in that song, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. And it's not just about having nothing left to lose, it's choosing.
She says we have nothing if we ain't free.
Yeah, exactly. So it's making the choice to remove consequences from the equation of decision-making in terms of what you do.
And then you see the lie. In
say.
fact, let me interrupt and give the full line. Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. And she laughs. Nothing. She says it's a joke. You're not giving anything up. You gain it all. Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. It's nothing. It's nothing if it ain't free. You don't have anything if you're not free. She laughs. It's a joke. Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. Ha! Nothing. Nothing if we ain't free. We ain't got nothing if we ain't got that.
Well, let's look at this from this point of view, from what we're talking about here. There you have people in Hollywood. They are known worldwide. They'll be recognized in almost any street in the world. They have the big house. They have fantastic amounts of money and wealth and stardom and all the rest of it. And they're not free enough to speak their truth. Why? Because they're concerned about the consequences. Consequences will always take your freedom away. Perceiving consequences for doing what you know to be right will always take your freedom away. And what the system is trying to do is put before you consequences. And if you don't make that choice of what are the consequences for me immediately, then they come along and you remind you. And they say, well, these are the consequences. This will happen. SEC, children, no films, and all the rest of it, to remind you of consequences. Why? Because they know that if you perceive consequences in part of your decision-making of do I speak my truth or not, then you will not be free to do that.
But let's talk about real consequences. If you give in to the chilling effect and intimidation, you will become a total slave, and the most evil people will take over the system via survival of the fittest, and you will be in a living hell.
How many people have put off and put off and put off doing what they know to be right because they fear the consequences, and then suddenly they hear the gate click behind them, and the time has passed that they can speak their truth any longer. And that's coming to the people who won't speak out if they don't start to do it. I mean, if these Hollywood stars who have seen the light, if you like, of what's going on in the world, if they got together and came out in unison, it would be so powerful.
Well, here's the problem. They're all surrounded by a mafia of handlers that threaten them and do all sorts of stuff if they don't.
Well, the thing is, that's when you make the choice, Alex, isn't it? Am I going to acquiesce to this, or am I going to do it anyway? There was a book once that was the title was something like "Feel the Fear and Then Do It Anyway," because that's what we need to do. Because the alternative is not to do it, and then it's not just the mafia of handling Hollywood stars. Those Hollywood stars then become subject to the mafia that will be handling the whole entire nation and eventually the world. Now, we're still at a point where we can turn that round. If we take our courage and do what we know to be right. You see, I've said this for years, Alex. What would change the world overnight is if people started making decisions in their everyday lives, and including the subject areas we're talking about, based on what is right, what is just, what is fair, what is the right thing for me to do, not what is the right thing for me in the short term, in the moment to do. That's how we got into this mess. But what is the right thing to do? And if we made that change from doing what we know to be right, as opposed to, well, what's right for me in the moment, that's when consequences start to, fill the sheet of paper. What are the consequences of me of doing? No, forget that. What is the right thing to do? Speak out. Well, do it then. And I tell you, I've had a lot of experience of this in Britain, certainly years ago, of getting mass ridicule for speaking out. And I tell you something, it's much easier when you do it than thinking about it. When you're thinking about doing something and you're thinking about the consequences and you're thinking about what could and couldn't and might, that kind of can freeze you, because all the things that could go wrong kind of fill your mind. But when you actually say, I'm going to do it, and you do it, it's amazing how easier it is, how much easier it is to speak your truth once you do it, rather than sitting around thinking of the consequences of doing it. Forget all that. Do it, and the world will shift, because the world is based on human perception. Information changes perception. Perception changes the world, because it changes human behavior and human action. And so those people with the platform, with the name in various areas, that have the platform to be heard, come on, let's have you. No more acquiescing, no more fear, no more what if.
Well, David, going back briefly, and then we're going to hit a few final news items and let you go, and I appreciate your time. It's been amazing. David, I go back to being 11, 12 years old, and they put me, once I went to middle school, and there would literally be young adults who were 3, 4 years of flunking school who would have mustaches. Sixth grade, kids with facial hair would beat us up. The teachers would do nothing. And I'd come home with black eyes and stuff. And my dad said, look, you just got to fight them. You just got to get angry and fight them. The thing is, I'd always been a really sweet child. And, even a few times when I was smaller, I had gotten mad and beat people up. And of course, these weren't bullies that backed off. Only a few times would I end up with a broken leg or a concussion in the hospital, but they always had worse. And I remember being about 12 years old, and these guys had already beat me up before, and some of them were actually in junior high and high school. And it was almost like a few times when I was in the wrong getting in a fight, because I kind of turned into a brawler by the time I was 16, 17. The few times I wasn't 100% in the right, I had no power. I was fighting somebody my same size, fighting somebody because we both said something to each other and we were acting tough, I had no power. But when 3 guys weighing over 200 pounds or a wrestling champion or a boxer assaulted me, it was like slow motion. Nothing could stop me. I'd break their nose every punch. I'd knock them on the ground every time. Because a man in the right can't be stopped by a man in the wrong. If the man in the right keeps on a coming. And it's the same thing politically, spiritually, everything. Is that is that when you're down and a bunch of people are attacking you, that's when you've got the real power, when you're on the right, because as Martin Luther King said, justice bends towards, the universe bends towards justice. And I just remember that feeling, you know, when I finally was like 12 years old and been beat up so many times, deciding I'm going to get mad, I'm going to attack these people back. The liberating feeling, it's humiliating to be scared and ball up and let them hit you and stomp you, but it's good to just I'm ready, you know, and I mean, that's what we need politically, spiritually, economically. We need to just say, you know what, you want some, you're going to get it, let's go. You see what I'm saying, David?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a point you reach where taking a step back or stopping in mid-stride is not an option. You just keep walking at them. There's a song that came out in England years ago. It was actually about getting drunk, actually, but there was a great line in it which says, or a chorus, I get knocked down, I get up again. You're never going to keep me down. And, you know, that's the spirit we need. And my goodness, you know, there's billions of us. There's a fraction of that number, a tiny, tiny infinitesimal fraction that are at the center of the web doing the string pulling of this gigantic conspiracy of human slavery. You know, I can see an answer to this. You know, we need to move the dynamics of where the power is from the tiny few to the mass of the people, where it really lies, and then the game changes, then the game's over.
All right.
But come on. No more excuses. Let's get on with it.
All right, David, I'll only give you about 10 more minutes because we've already kept you longer, and we've got some videos and other live guests coming up and phone calls I'm going to be taking, but we're very honored to have you. DavidIcke.com speaking. Before you leave us, talk about where you're speaking this weekend and then some of the other speaking engagements. Yeah,
I'm speaking in New York in Times Square on Sunday, but I think all the tickets have gone for that. But I'm in San Francisco, San Rafael, just near San Francisco, next Saturday, speaking all day from 10 in the morning to late in the evening, connecting an enormous amount of dots and many other things.
And a strange synchronicity, because I hadn't thought of this when the station finally got me to do it, because I'm also doing a TV interview while I'm out there and some other things. I'm going to be speaking on the 24th, the day after you.
The day after.
About 30 miles south in Santa Cruz, and that's sold out, so there's a second one on the Monday, ksco.com, if folks want to get tickets to that event out in Santa Cruz. And people can find out all of this at davidicke.com. But the final issues I want to cover with you, you were just on, wasn't it just last week, David?
Yeah, last week, mate.
And we were talking about Project Bluebeam, a staged fake alien invasion. And folks, if you don't believe us, just search the term Project Bluebeam. Part of it's been declassified. It goes back to the 60s and 70s. And in the 90s, they declassified stuff. I even saw in Popular Mechanics about 3,000-foot holograms the Pentagon can project of the Easter Bunny, Jesus, Buddha, whatever they want. You know, David Icke, I mean, you know, they can project Superman up there. They can project Alex Jones. They can project, you know, George Bush, Kim Jong-il. They could do anything they wanted, and they admitted to unify the earth against an outside alien threat. That's how they want to get their world government.
Right.
Well, to then see these, quote, military people come out and say, the aliens will arrive over major cities, including New York, on the 13th. And then we're going to show that ABC News article up on screen right now. Then I'm going to Zbigniew Brzezinski after that. Sorry, I flipped that on the guys. FAA unable to identify object flying over New York City, and it looks like something out of you know, Star Wars / The Fifth Element, hovering with, you know, lights on it and everything. Well, we know they've got all sorts of hovercraft. We know the Germans had stuff that looked like flying saucers. That's where the original stories. We know they say the SR-71 Blackbird in service in 55, developed in 52. So they say the fastest plane in the world, you know, over 50 years ago. Total baloney. We know that they kept for 20 years secret the B-2 bomber. We know that DARPA had computers and internet in the 60s. We know all that. But to now have the Pentagon and the press club and all this promotion and all these TV shows and all this push that aliens are about to land. David, I'm going to give you the floor for about 5 minutes on this. Then I've got the Zbigniew Brzezinski clip and about how we're going to win. I want to get your take on that. And I'll let you get out to you know, some of the other interviews and things you're doing there in New York City. But, I mean, here it is, because this morning I'm like, oh, the UFOs didn't come, and then boom, they arrive. There's reports all over the world. I mean, this is big. I mean, if aliens are showing up, folks, they're not going to have Air Force officers telling you they're about to arrive. And we need to look up the names of all these people and really do some deep research, because we know there's a government program to stage this, to unify people, and also to cover up your research that there is off-world activity, and that they're trying to create a hoax to control that